Imagine being handed everything, the #1 pick in the entire NFL draft, a franchise desperate for a savior, Carson Palmer, a skill set so rare that doctors compared your arm to Peyton Manning's before you even started. Imagine building toward what looks like a dynasty. And then, having it all ripped away on the second play of your very first playoff game. That's Carson Palmer's story. And the wildest part? That was just the beginning of the downfall. Before I talk about the fall, we have to talk about how high Carson Palmer climbed, because the higher you are, the harder you hit the ground. Palmer grew up in Fresno, California, and by the time he got to the University of Southern California, it was clear he was something special. At USC, he wasn't just a starter, he became a legend. In 2002, he won the Heisman Trophy, college football's most prestigious individual award, cementing himself as the best player in the country. The NFL took notice immediately. In the 2003 NFL Draft, the Cincinnati Bengals selected Carson Palmer with the very first overall pick. Not just a high pick, the one that signals to the entire league, this man is the future. But Cincinnati had a problem. They already had a starting quarterback in John Kitna, so Palmer sat his entire rookie season, watching, learning, developing. Some saw that as a waste. In hindsight, it might have been the best thing that ever happened to him. In 2004, Palmer took over as the starter and showed flashes. But 2005 was when the football world truly understood what they had. Carson Palmer absolutely erupted that season. He led the entire NFL in passing touchdowns, threw for over 3,800 yards, and posted a passer rating of 101.1, a franchise record for the Bengals at the time. He had Chad Johnson and TJ Houshmandzadeh catching his passes. He had Rudy Johnson on the ground, and for the first time in 15 years, the Cincinnati Bengals had a winning season. He was a Pro Bowler. He was the face of a franchise on the rise. Bengals fans hadn't felt this good in over a decade. Then came the playoffs. January 8, 2006, Wild Card Weekend, the Cincinnati Bengals host the Pittsburgh Steelers, their most hated rivals. The stands at Paul Brown Stadium are electric. 15 years of waiting and suffering, and now they finally have their guy, their quarterback, their shot. The game kicks off. Cincinnati gets the ball. Second play from scrimmage. Palmer drops back, surveys the field and fires a deep ball down the left sideline. A 66-yard strike to wide receiver Chris Henry. The crowd goes absolutely insane. And then, silence. Steelers defensive tackle Kimo von Oelhoffen rolled into Palmer's left knee as he released the football. Palmer crumbled to the turf. He grabbed his leg. He didn't get up. The diagnosis was devastating. Torn ACL, torn MCL, shredded ligaments, damaged cartilage, a dislocated kneecap. His surgeon called it devastating and potentially career-ending. The Bengals lost the game 31-17. Their Super Bowl window, which felt so real, so close, slammed shut. And Carson Palmer was never quite the same again. To his credit, Carson Palmer fought back really hard. He returned in time for the 2006 season opener, an almost miraculous recovery, and actually played well. He threw for over 4,000 yards and 28 touchdowns and made another Pro Bowl. The football world applauded his toughness and his resilience, but if you watched closely, something was off. The explosiveness wasn't quite the same. The deep ball that had made him elite looked slightly different. He was releasing earlier, compensating, protecting that knee mentally even when it had physically healed. Teammates and analysts noticed him throwing off his back foot more often, launching passes over receivers rather than driving through them. After 2006, Palmer would never again finish a season with a passer rating above 90 in Cincinnati. The decline was slow but steady, and then came another devastating blow. In 2008, Palmer tore the UCL in his throwing elbow and missed most of the season. 2 major injuries in 3 years. The questions that once seemed unthinkable were now being asked out loud. Is this guy still the franchise quarterback we thought he was? The remaining years in Cincinnati were a slow grind. Palmer still had stretches of solid play. He led the Bengals back to the playoffs in 2009, but the team around him was inconsistent. The coaching wasn't moving the needle, and the relationship between Palmer and Bengals owner Mike Brown was quietly deteriorating. Mike Brown had a reputation around the league as one of the most difficult owners to play for. By 2011, Carson Palmer had had enough. He issued a stunning demand, "Trade me or I'll retire." He meant it too. He didn't show up for the preseason, didn't show up for the start of the regular season. He simply refused to play for the Bengals another day. Mike Brown's response? Absolutely not. He called it a bluff. But the Oakland Raiders, desperate for a quarterback after Jason Campbell went down with an injury, came calling with an offer Brown couldn't ignore: a 2012 first-round pick and a second-round pick. The Bengals took it. After 8 seasons, Carson Palmer was done in Cincinnati. The messy breakup left a bad taste on both sides, and for Palmer, it signaled the beginning of the journeyman years. Carson Palmer arrived in Oakland mid-season in 2011, inheriting a 4-2 Raiders team that, honestly, looked like it might have something going. Instead, the Raiders just collapsed down the stretch, finishing 8-8 and missing the playoffs. 2012 was even worse. Palmer threw for 4,018 yards, but he also threw 22 interceptions, a career worst at that point. The Raiders finished 8-8 again, just kind of mediocre in both seasons. In 24 starts with Oakland, Palmer went 8-16. Let that sink in for a second. The #1 overall pick, the Heisman Trophy winner, the guy who once looked like a future Hall of Famer. 8 wins and 16 losses. Oakland moved on, and Palmer was traded to the Arizona Cardinals before the 2013 season. No one expected much. He was 33 years old, banged up, and on his 3rd team. Most people figured this was the last stop before retirement. They were wrong, but not in the way you'd expect. What happened in Arizona is, honestly, one of the most surprising second acts in NFL quarterback history. Under new head coach Bruce Arians, an offensive genius with a track record of reviving quarterbacks, Carson Palmer found a second life. And, he had Larry Fitzgerald to throw too, one of the greatest receivers ever to play the game. 2013 was a rocky adjustment year, with too many interceptions as Palmer and the receivers learned Arians' complex system. 2014 looked promising, until Palmer tore his ACL again in Week 6, ending his season. 2 torn ACLs now in the same knee. But then came 2015. Carson Palmer, at 35 years old, put together the best season of his entire career. He threw for 4,671 yards and a career-high 35 touchdowns. The Cardinals went 13-3. He posted a passer rating of 104.6. He made his 3rd Pro Bowl and was named a 2nd-team All-Pro. He was the frontrunner for NFL MVP before a late-season stumble. For one season, it looked like the football gods were finally going to let Carson Palmer have his moment. The 2015 Cardinals made it all the way to the NFC Championship game, 1 win from the Super Bowl, and then it all just fell apart. Palmer threw 4 interceptions against the Carolina Panthers, 4 in a 49-15 blowout, the worst possible game at the worst possible moment. He was later revealed to be playing through a dislocated finger on his throwing hand, but whether that explains it or excuses it is a debate that still goes on, honestly. The fact is, when the biggest moment of his career arrived, Carson Palmer had a disaster. The Cardinals lost. Palmer never reached another NFC championship. The 2016 season started with high hopes, but the Cardinals regressed badly, finishing 7-8-1. Palmer dealt with multiple injuries and inconsistency. The window with that core group was closing, and 2017 was the end. In Week 7 of the 2017 season, playing in London against the Los Angeles Rams, Carson Palmer broke his left arm. He was placed on injured reserve and never played again. The Cardinals finished 8-8. On January 2, 2018, Carson Palmer announced his retirement in an open letter. He was 38 years old. Over the years, I've had teammates who decided to hang it up, and I would ask them how they knew when it was time to walk away. The answer was almost always the same: you just know. For me, that time is now. So, what exactly went wrong? Why did a man with this much talent, this much potential, end his career without a single Super Bowl appearance and with more what-ifs than highlights? Let's break it down. Reason number 1. The knee injury that broke everything. You simply cannot overstate how much. January 8, 2006 changed Carson Palmer's trajectory. Before that hit, he was on pace to be talked about alongside the Mannings and Bradys of the world. After it, he was always playing with a mental and physical scar. 2 doctors called it potentially career-ending. He came back, but those who played with him say he was never the same in how he processed the pocket and released the ball. Reason number 2, a chain of injuries that never stopped. 2 torn ACLs. A torn UCL in his elbow, a broken arm, a dislocated finger, concussions, shoulder injuries. Carson Palmer spent his career getting put back together. He missed 42 games in his career, and that doesn't even count his redshirt rookie year. Every time he got his footing, another injury knocked it out from under him. Reason number 3, playing for bad teams at the wrong times. Carson Palmer never had the luxury of a powerhouse organization. The Bengals under Mike Brown were notoriously cheap and dysfunctional. The Raiders were in full rebuilding chaos. Even in Arizona, where he found his best years, the team's window was too narrow and too injury-riddled to punch through to a Super Bowl. Reason number 4, the Bengals' divorce. The messy trade demand in 2011 cost him time, cost him goodwill, and sent him to Oakland, a team going nowhere. Rather than staying in a familiar system and rebuilding naturally, Palmer forced a move to a franchise that couldn't maximize him. 2 wasted years, 2 losing seasons, prime years of his career, gone. Reason number 5, postseason struggles. Carson Palmer's playoff record speaks for itself. He won just 1 playoff game his entire career. 1. For a quarterback with his talent and regular season numbers, that's a damning legacy. His 2 worst performances, the 2006 knee injury game and the 2015 NFC Championship, came at the absolute worst moments. Whether by bad luck, injury, or performance, he simply never delivered when it mattered most. Reason number 6, throwing off his back foot. This is the one that haunted analysts for years. After the knee injury, Palmer developed a habit of releasing the ball early, before properly setting his feet, before fully trusting his plant leg. It led to errant throws, overthrown receivers, and a higher interception rate. It was the ghost of Kimo von Oelhoffen living rent-free in his mechanics. Carson Palmer finished his career with 46,247 passing yards, 12th most in NFL history at the time of his retirement. He threw 294 touchdowns, he made 3 Pro Bowls, he won the Heisman, he was the first overall pick. On paper, that's a remarkable career. But football isn't just paper, and the story of Carson Palmer isn't a story of failure. It's a story of proximity, a quarterback who was that close, so many times, and always found something. A torn ligament, a trade, a dislocated finger, a 49-15 blowout, standing in his way. Was Carson Palmer a Hall of Famer? Probably not. Was he better than his legacy suggests? Almost certainly yes. The downfall of Carson Palmer wasn't a single catastrophic collapse. It was 1,000 paper cuts over 15 years. It was a career defined not by what he did, but by what we were all convinced he was going to do. And in the end, maybe that's the saddest story of all.